Apologies for bad lighting. I just came up to my sewing room to work. I'm gonna show you what's going on behind here real quick. So, walls are coming down. I'm standing in the closet. You can see the transition from closet floor to the other room. So, we've begun the process. And I'm going to now turn around, and now I'm showing you the sewing room again. It's a bit of a mess because we're really working on this in phases. So I thought, well, I only have a short time. I'm gonna get a couple more videos knocked out before that wall comes down. This little space is completely cleaned out and I can't sew anymore. I know we have to rewire things, so I guess that's been taken care of. I'm going to do pattern making. So some top-down filming, some wrap skirts for you today. So I want to show you specifically circle wrap skirts or A-line wrap skirts like you would use for just everyday wear, but also if you do dancing, if you wanted like a ballet type skirt. I'm going to show you some pattern making. You don't have to buy anything. They're very simple to draft out and you just need a few measurements. Because it wraps around and it's bigger than the body, you don't even have to be that exact. So we're going to make a few different wrap skirts and I'm going to just talk to you about it. It'll be mostly all top-down camera today, and I may sew up a couple and put them on my half scale form. All right, on to pattern making. The first thing we're going to do is measure our body. Now we're going to work with our little half scale person. So I'm working in small numbers. So if I measure her little waist, it is 15 inches. So because she's half scale, if you were to size this up, she would be a 30-inch waist if it were a full-sized adult. 15-inch waist and a 20-inch hip. So that's what we're working with. I'm going to write that down right here. Okay, we're going to go to top down now, and I'm going to show you some stuff down here on my paper. All right, so the first thing I want to talk to you about is if you're doing a wrap skirt, if you have your body like so, here's our waist. A wrap skirt will go around the body twice in the front. So if you have a regular skirt, you have your back skirt pattern like this, right? And you have your front skirt pattern, and you have their halves. But in a wrap skirt, you're going to have two fronts. You're cutting two fronts out. So that's what makes wrap skirts so fun, but they also take a lot more fabric as a rule. Unless you're super tall, if your fabric is 45 inches this way, make this length how much you're going to buy going this direction. So this is normally the direction we cut things. This is our lengthwise grain. Flip that for a wrap skirt usually. So the first way to do a wrap skirt is to buy whatever your hip is. So for her it was 20 inches, so that would be a 40-inch hip. So you need that 40 inches almost twice. So you need 40 inches that will go around the body, and then you need it again for another front. So that's 40 plus another 20. So you need 60 inches, and that's just the hip measurement, right? So here's our original hip measurement. Here's the extra front. We also need wearing ease, like we have to be able to sit down in this thing. So you need to add at least 10, I would say would be pretty minimal. So another 10 inches. So now we're up to 70 inches of fabric this way, which is about 2 yards of fabric to go around a 40-inch hip person. And that would be a straight wrap skirt. We're going to do circle wrap skirts. So you can see we're going to need a little bit more. But because of the length of the fabric this way, you don't need 45 inches long unless you want it ankle length, right? Usually we want it shorter. So actually, if you think about how fabric works, if you were going to, let's put a little circle right in the middle of this. Like if this was the waist, and you were going to measure out the length that you want this direction, right, this way. So let's say you want a 60-inch or a 30-inch skirt length. So if we measure out 30 inches, you can see how you could get a circle skirt pretty easy out of that 45-inch length. And there you go, you've got a circle skirt, just like that. You can see how easy that is to make a wrap skirt. And that's just a plain wrap, fairly full skirt, not super full, but it would hang nice. It'd be a nice A-line skirt. So how do we get to this point? Well, we knew for my little half scale, she's got a 15-inch waist. So we know we need this, we need our circle, our waist to be 15 inches. So we're gonna have a 15-inch waist this way. And then we have to add another half for another front, because we have to have two fronts to wrap around, or close to that. You can have a front that's not full, but it's dangerous. You want as much coverage in the front as possible so that when the skirt pulls open, everything's covered. So if it's 15 inches, half of 15 is 7.5, which is 22. So I would have, this would be 22 without seam allowance. After that, we need to add a seam allowance too. So don't forget your seam allowances when you're drafting this up. I know I'm talking a lot, so let's just draw. All All right, so for my person, she has a 15-inch waist, and then I need another 7 inches. So I'm thinking about how much I need to go across her body. But the easy way to do this, I personally think, besides making the nice rectangle very easy, is I like to do panels. And the more panels you get, you can see how they will start going around, and you get a nice shape. All it is how wide you want your hem and how small your waist is. That's really it. And then it just flares out. And because of the shape of this, it should fit most hips, even a hip like mine. So if I do a 2-inch waist up here for her, I'm going to start at 2 inch for her waist. So here's her 2 inches. That's the little waist measurement. And I'm going to want about a 15-inch length. I'm going to use this to help me keep everything straight. All right, so at the hem, if you think about how wide your hem is, if I have a 15-inch waist and I go to 4 here, that will give it a slight fullness, but not as full as I really want it. I need a longer ruler. I wonder where my really long one is. That's the thing when you're moving around stuff. You can't find anything. We'll stack and use them. Okay, now I have my center so I can get this nice and even. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to do 3 inches on each side. So now I've got 2 inches up here, 6 inches at the hem, and then I'm going to connect those up. I'm making this straight, but you could definitely use a hip curve and make this slightly curvy if you want to add a little bit more fullness to that hem. All right, so now I'm doing this in half scale. If you were doing this in full scale, this would be 4 inches and 12 inches. Whoops. So I have 2 inches here, which full scale would equal 4. Now that's if you have a 30-inch waist. And down here I have 6, which full scale would equal 12. Okay, so this is my half scale and this is my full scale measurements. And there's our pattern piece. This line down the middle would be our grain line. The nice thing about doing this is you could easily flip these back and forth and you get a lot of cutting out of your fabric if your fabric isn't directional. Also, if you wanted to do like a black and white pattern or something graphic, you could easily alternate your little panels. The smaller the panel, the more stripy look you would get, and the wider the panel, the more it's going to look like a gored skirt or a paneled skirt. Now we have to decide how many of these do I want. If I have 2 inches up here, we know I need 22 inches total to go around the body to get me the length that I want. So at 2 inches, I would need 10 of these gores, and then I need to add my seam allowance. Don't forget your seam allowance. And I'm only going to do 1/4 inch because we're working in half scale. And then this is it. I'm going to do that all the way around, do a little bit more at the hem. So we're going to cut that out. We cut out 10 panels. We sew them together in all these little seams. We have a beautiful little gored skirt that wraps around in the front. Now let's talk about how we treat our waistline. You can do a real simple small waistline like a ribbon waistline or a really fine narrow waistline, and then you don't have to worry about a buttonhole or something for it to feed through, and you can just wrap it around the waist and tie it. That's an easy way. You can also do a wider waistband and do buttonhole and buttons on each side of the waistband, and that will help hold everything together, and it's a little more formal look. You can do ties at each side of the waist with a buttonhole on one end, and you bring the one tie through the buttonhole, bring it around the body and tie it. So there's lots of ways you can end up putting this together. When I used to do ballet skirts, we just did a pretty ribbon on it or a bias, a fold over bias, because you just want to wrap and tie. This is my first and one of my most favorite ways to do this. Okay, I've drafted for you a couple more just to make it a little easier for you to see. If you're using that one piece again, your 45-inch long fabric by however wide you need it to get your skirt out of. If this were full scale, we're talking 2 yards or so across here. You can do asymmetrical by curving or changing the shape of one side. This little shadowy area is what would be cut away. Or here we are where you could do sort of a high-low where we've cut away, we've curved out the fronts of both of these, and now you have sort of a high-low skirt. You can also really get dramatic and make this angle interesting. You could easily add a ruffle to this if you want to really get dramatic. If you're going to add a ruffle, you'd want to, of course, shorten this and almost turn this into a yoke with a ruffle added on it. You can see how many variations you have when doing this. I'm going to sew up my little piece that is all of the little panels, and I'm going to go ahead and sew up a couple of these just so you can see the variation. Let's talk about fabric real quick when doing this. If you go buy nice quilter's cotton, I just pulled this one out because it's a scrap. You can see the weight, you can see it's stiff, and it's going to be the same on the body. So if you want a skirt that sort of stands away from the body, you'll go with something like this. If you want something soft and drapey, go with something more like this. And you can see the drape is a lot different on a fabric like that. A crepe, a georgette, a challis, where this is fine, 100% okay, but not going to give you the same effect on the body. So be careful of your bias. The same will be true of my paneled one that I'm getting ready to make. It's got a lot, so here you can see it. I'm going to cut it so the center panel is on the straight of grain. So we've got, it's not true bias, we've got a little bit of bias on each side. Now the more dramatic, let's say you want a really full skirt, fuller than circle, more than circle, which would be great for dancing and twirling, that sort of thing. Increase this hemline, but leave the waist the same. And you can just get fuller and fuller. 2 inch by 6 inch, and the next panel could be 2 inch by 8 inch. So like you can definitely do that and get really interesting effect. So I'm going to do some sewing up real quick and show you different skirts and how they can be done, and maybe give you some ideas to go out and sew for yourself. All right, I'm going to go ahead and draw out this little pattern onto this fabric. Now I folded my fabric in half, so I'm starting with that. Okay, so I have a 15-inch waist plus another front gives me 22 inches. Now I'm going to fold that in half, folded my fabric in half. So I've got 11 inches. Now I don't need to go 11 across. I'm going to make a curved waist because I have a curved body, or my dress form is curved. So I'm going to start down here and make a little mark at the 11. And you can get, and somewhere I own one, you can get little tools that are meant for this. Now we need seam allowance, so I'm actually coming down like 1/4 inch here. I just want a little bit of seam allowance because this is just a sample. I'm not going to actually be wearing it. It's not going to be perfect, but I'm going to get it started this way. There we go. And you can see the shape. Now I did not add any wearing ease to the waist because it is wrapped and doubled in the front, so we should be fine with just doubling our waist measurement. Now I need to do my length, and it depends on how long you want your skirt. If you're doing a ballet skirt, you may have, you know, the front 7 and the back 10 if you do like a high-low. For my little half scale gal, yeah, like a 12-inch skirt, we're just going to come straight out from our waist measurement. So you need your seam allowance to sew on your waistband, and then you need your hem at the bottom. So you need to include that when you're doing this measurement. Don't forget those things. So I'm going to go down to 13, and I'm making this even for now. Now I can always come back and change it, but for the most basic one, I'm just going to go around and mark my 13, and I just mark on each side of my tape measure, and you can see I don't have to make a pattern. Now the thing is, once you make this fabric pattern, before you sew it up, you could easily take this to your pattern paper and trace it off, and then you'd have a permanent pattern too. Or you could lay it on top and make 6 or 7 more. Just use your fabric pattern if it's stable enough. It would be wise even to make it out of a muslin, which would be more stable, and you could just have a muslin pattern to transfer to paper and to other things. So we're just going to go around like this. And now I'm just going to true up this edge. Matching up my lines, and in this measurement I have a 1/4 inch seam allowance at the waist and like a 3/4 for a hem if I want it, and then I have 1/4 inch side seam here. Not really side seam, this is actually, you know, where it wraps around, and that's it. We've got our little skirt drafted. So I'm going to cut it out so you can see what it looks like, and we have to be careful, and we'll pay attention right here. We'll see if I got a little peak or not. I'm cutting with paper scissors. Let's rip. It's so dark in here with my lights off. I mean, I have my ceiling fan light, but can't wait to get my good lights. Okay, so there's my waist out. There's our little skirt. So when I open this up, that's what it looks like. Now this is the cotton, the heavy cotton. You can see it's nice and stiff. I'm going to go ahead and just take this to the dress form real quick and show you. I got an extension cord and plugged in my light, and so we have better lighting now. And I'm going to show you some finished little skirts. So the first one is the most basic, and it is this. I'll take some top-down pictures so you can see them good. But it's this little skirt, and I should have taken a video, but that's this. So we're going to just wrap it around. Now all I did was serge the waist on this to keep it from stretching. Is that simple little skirt in a stiff fabric. Easy, easy. Now I took this piece, I laid it down on paper, and I traced it. So now I have a pattern, a paper pattern. It doesn't look like anything to you. And then I used that to make another pattern. And this one, and these are on the fold at the center back. That pattern is this picture. So I made this one, so see how this little corner is taken away, so it's sort of a high-low. And I would consider this like a dance skirt. When my girls danced, I made loads of these. Can you see it's higher up here? And I didn't make it real dramatically short. Now dance skirts can be quite short, especially in the front. But it looks like that. And you can see how it hangs differently in this softer fabric. So can you see this little this pretty little shape right here? So there's the same skirt, slightly different. It's a little shorter in the front, it's a little longer in the back. I didn't make it real dramatic, but you can see the difference in the front to the back. Okay, so the last one I'm going to show you is the one where we did the panels. So I cut out 10 of these. I showed you the drafting this at the beginning. I cut 5 in one fabric and 5 in another so I could show you the interesting details you could get, sort of an interesting design we could get. So do you recognize this fabric? If you saw me, if you went back and you saw me make the my ring fit pants that I exercise in, that's this fabric. And this is a knit, so again, this could be sewn in a knit. And isn't that cute? Look at how cute that is. I like the stripes a lot. I think it makes it look super interesting. And a totally different detail. You could make this skirt much fuller. You can see it's full, and because it's split in the front, you've got a lot of fabric there. But if you want to make this an even fuller skirt, when you're drafting it, make the hem wider so that your little triangles, your little shape is more dramatic. See, this is not that dramatic from top to bottom. So the more dramatic it is with your small waist and your wide hem, the more fullness that you'll get in your skirt. Well, I hope this inspires you to go draft some wrap skirts and try something out. There's a lot of play in there, and if you make one of these like this, that's straightforward and pretty basic, I'd love to know. So leave a comment if you try it. Let me know how it goes. See you next week for another fun video.